all a big fly, the stormy water. She wears red feathers and a hooly skirt. She wears red feathers and a hooly skirt. She lives on just coking nuts and fish from out the sea. She got a rose in her hair, a gleam in her eye, and love in her heart for me. The Galway version of that was, she wears red feathers 'cause some hooligan took her skirt. She wears red, etc.
We'll get it on evidence. So.
Hello, ma'am. How are you? I'm good. Listen, it's a very quick call, but I just thought I'd let you know that we're just leaving the Aran Islands now. We've had a beautiful day with Father Powell, and about half an hour ago, Mark proposed to me, and I said yes. Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know. Pretty romantic to ask somebody to marry in the Aran Islands, so I know. So I just wanted to let you know anyway.
Father Powell has just thrown himself off the cliff.
Did you hear that? Father Powell said he's just thrown himself off the cliff. He's so excited.
She got a rose in her hair, a gleam in her eye, and love in her heart for me. The Galway version of that was, she wears red feathers.
Who was a Protestant child to a Catholic king. He thought this gave him the right to take the throne of England. Now you couldn't do that today, of course, but he did get away with it. James was furious. I'm going to take my throne and I'm going to take it by force. Heading back to England, he thought to himself, whoa, I'm going to make a very strategic stop before I go to England. And unfortunately for us folks, that stop was here. And we've had the troubles ever since. We do have a religious divide due to the troubles here. It is 72% Catholic and 28% Protestant. Where you're standing now, believe it or not, is 97% Catholic and only 3% Protestant. Cross that small bridge and it's 50-50. A very famous wall, by the way, with a mural on it. And it read, Londonderry West Bank Loyalists. Still under siege, no surrender. The siege mentality is actually still here. But as we all know at the moment, there are dialogue happening in Northern Ireland. Talks are taking part. Believe you me, they're not solving the problems of Northern Ireland. It's still very, very raw. But at least they're talking. There's an air of optimism about the country at the moment. You know the old saying, when you're marching, you're not fighting? Well, here in the city, we say when you're talking, you're not shooting. So hopefully that will continue. Not for me, not for my children, but maybe my children's children might see a more peaceful land to live in. Right along that hill and the whole way around this city, King James bombarded this city with his cannons. King James fired a cannon himself. From the trees you see in the distance here, now that's across the water in St. John's Park, the cannonball weighed 270 pounds, about 20 stone. That's about twice my width, right? It actually bounced twice in a small street here called Pump Street, killing 2 children on the way up, and embedded itself in a cemetery. But the siegers were astounded. Why did it blow up and blow the cathedral? To their amazement, when they pulled it from the ground, it was completely hollow, and a hole on the top, or the bottom if you wish to say. Inside it was a message from King James, asking them to surrender. Well, we know that they didn't surrender, of course. The local people here, by the way, actually say it was the very first airmail. A letter by cannonball. Now, I'm going to quote the British government, by the way. This is not me saying this. I am actually contracted by the British government to do tours here as well. The British government made a statement. Internment was the biggest mistake that we have made in British political history. It was a recruitment drive for the IRA. Young people were queuing in the streets to lift arms because their families, friends, neighbours were being jailed for no reason. On the 30th of January 1972, a further civil rights march was called for in this city, under the banner, by the way, of anti-internment. Over 20,000 people took part in this march. deemed illegal once again. We're not allowed to the city centre. The local organisers says fine, we'll go to Free Derry Corner, we'll make our speeches there. The youth of the day, the sign of the times, wanted to go to the city centre, and a riot broke out. A ferocious riot broke out that day. Buildings were being burned and people were being very severely hurt. The British Army moved in to make arrests, and they says they were fired upon by one single sniper. In the next 22 minutes, 108 live rounds were fired. 13 people lay dead on Rossville Street of the Bogside. A 14th, and Mr Johnston, died of his injuries 1 month later. There were 14 people maimed that day, including women of course. This became famously known as Bloody Sunday. On the night of Bloody Sunday, as we know of every tragedy in the world, a government makes a statement. The British government chose New York, by the way. And on the night of Bloody Sunday, the British consulate in New York made a statement to the world. There were 13 people shot dead today on the streets of Londonderry. They were bombers, gunmen and terrorists. This infuriated the people. An inquiry was immediately set up. This inquiry, known as the Widgery Tribunal, was deemed a whitewash. The local people would not take part in this inquiry for one simple reason, that Lord Widgery, the chair of the tribunal, was actually a colonel-in-chief of the British Army. He was not going to condemn his own soldiers. Died down for a while, and a few years later in the 80s, a man called John Major, a Prime Minister, made a statement in the Houses of Parliament and all hell let loose. He said that maybe, just maybe, some of these people weren't armed. Well, everyone jumped on the bandwagon. For the first time in British political history, an inquiry was overturned and a new inquiry began. The local people all took part in the second inquiry for one reason. There were 3 judges. 1 British, 1 Canadian and 1 Australian. Would you believe that we are waiting for the unfold of this inquiry this summer? We have just been told that it's going to be fourfold until January. It is the longest inquiry in history and the most expensive inquiry in history. Now just touching £200 million sterling. I have to categorically state that the families victims of Bloody Sunday have not received 1 penny of this money. It's not money. We do have some of the richest lawyers and solicitors that this country holds, of course. But in fairness to the lawyers and the solicitors, they are heavily taxed on this money, and it's gone back to the government again. So ladies and gentlemen, when you're all back at your homes in all parts of the world, as we know where we're all from, and maybe in January if you're watching the news and you hear some kind of something unfolding about this, I ask you keep us in your prayers and keep us in your thoughts, just that we get some kind of closure to this. Remember the day that you stood on the Derry walls when we talked about Bloody Sunday. That's the story of Bloody Sunday. Is everybody quite clear with that? Come over here to the corner, folks. I want to point out these murals to you. The Bogside area, all the paintings on the walls, of course, but I want to point out some more important ones. If you look to the very end here, you'll see a very colourful one. You see it there with the colours on it, like squared colours. This is the Peace mural, by the way, designed by Protestant and Catholic children together. You see the dark colours rising to the bright colours of a new day. Of course, the dove of peace and the oak leaf of Derry behind it. The Peace mural. On our way to school, a gun battle broke out between the IRA and the Army. And that was shot twice in the back of the head and died instantly. This is the only mural, by the way, in the Bogside that has been physically changed since it was painted. The Bogside artist says if we get any kind of a settlement or agreement in Northern Ireland, we'll change it. And that they did, believe it or not. On the mural, if you look slightly to the left of it, you'll see a rifle. This was once a solid black rifle. It's now painted red and broken in half for the handing of the arms. Above Annette's head, you'll see a bullet flame. It was always black and grey. It's now painted with light. Now we have light itself.
You've heard of the falls and the Shankill, yeah? They're pretty much parallel to one another. This road just to the left here, that's one of 4 roads by which you could literally go from one side to the other, as we would say. And these roads all have their own gates. They The gates are closed at certain times. They are closed at night time in particular, and when the gates are locked up at night and the roads are closed off, the gates are part of the peace wall, as it's called. Have you heard of these peace walls or peace lines? The peace walls were, I suppose, a quick fix solution all those years ago. They were just a means by which they hoped to minimise violence, basically wherever Catholic and Protestant people, communities did live near one another. The conflict is described more as a conflict of nationality and identity. So it's more about British and Irish than it is about Protestant and Catholic.